not what it was meant to be. All this pain, all this suffering, there's a better place waiting for me in heaven. Every tear will be wiped away, every sorrow and sin erased. We'll dance on seas of amazing grace in heaven, in heaven. I'm going home where the streets are golden, every chain is broken. Oh, I wanna go, oh, I wanna go home where every fear is gone. I'm in your open arms where I belong. Lay down my burdens, I lay down my past. I run to Jesus, no turning back. Thank God Almighty, I'll be free at last in heaven, in heaven. I'm going home where the streets are golden, every chain is broken. Oh, I wanna go, oh, I wanna go home where every fear is gone. I'm in your open arms where I belong. Blinded eyes will finally see, the dead will rise on the shores of eternity. The drum will sound, the angels will sing. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I am going home where the streets are golden, every chain is broken. Oh, I wanna go, oh, I wanna go home where every fear is gone. I'm in your open arms where I belong, where I belong. I'm going home, I'm going home, I'm on my way home, I'm going home.
When does a scar become a tattoo? When does the sky fade back to blue? When does this broken heart that I'm holding beat on its own? When do I stop feeling this burn? When do I live? When do I learn? When will I realize that look in your eyes won't come back? I'm right here, standing in the pouring rain. Tick tock, hours all feel the same. I say your name, I say your name. But I'm right here, running just as fast as I can. And I swear I'm never gonna do this again. I say your name, I say your name. Try to be strong, but I keep dreaming of you. Oh, I really wish this was easy to do, but I've never felt this tied up and helpless. And all that I know
outside looking in. This is where grace begins. We were hungry, we were thirsty, with nothing left to give. Oh, the shape that we were in. And just when all hope seemed lost, love opened the door for us. He said, come to the table. Come join the sinners who have been redeemed. Take your place beside the Savior. Sit down and be set free. Come to the table. Liars and these thieves, there's no one unwelcome here. And that sin and shame that you brought with you, you can leave it at the door and let mercy draw you near. So come to the table. Come join the sinners who have been redeemed. Take your place beside the Savior. Sit down and be set free. Come to the table. Come to the table. To the thief and to the doubter, to the hero and the coward, to the prisoner and the soldier, to the young and to the older, all who hunger, all who thirst, all the last and all the first, all the paupers and the princes, all who failed, you've been forgiven, all who dream and all who suffer, all who loved and lost another, all the chained and all the free, all who follow, all who lead, anyone who's been let down, all the lost you have been found, all who've been labeled right or wrong, to everyone who hears this song. Come to the table. Come join the sinners, you have been redeemed. Take your place beside the Savior. Sit down and be set free. Whoa, sit down and be set free. Come to the table. Come to the table. Sit down and be set free. Come to the table.
An ache so deep that I can hardly breathe. This pain can't be imagined. Will it ever heal? Your hand, so small, held a strand of my hair, so strong. All I could do was keep believing. Was that enough? Is anyone there? I wanna scream. Is this a dream? How could this happen to me? This isn't fair. This nightmare, this kind of torture, I just can't bear. I want you here. I want you here. I waited so long for you to come. Then you were here, and now you're gone. I was not prepared for you to leave me. Oh, this is misery. Are you still there? I wanna scream. Is this a
Well, good evening, everybody. This is Real Life Podcast with Cheri and Erin, coming to you at 8 p.m. Central Time here in the Midwest. And wanted to introduce myself. I'm Cheri Nadine. I'm the owner and founder of Collegiate Sports Advocate, with 20 years plus in sports and coaching and training and recruiting. And we have Erin Sykes online with us tonight.
Hey guys, I'm Erin. Worked with CSA for 3 years now. A former Division I athlete at Ole Miss, where I also spent a couple of years as a volunteer assistant, and have since been just given advice and advocating for student athletes.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to see all the colors online here tonight, and hopefully many of you will see this in replay. But we get so many questions, Erin, about the recruiting process and how did these recruiting rules that have happened in the last couple years affected us. One of the recruiting rules happened in fall of 2017, where they really tightened down the timing. So it wasn't an amount of days that you could come out recruiting, but they actually put it into no more Fridays and a couple weekends. So it really left with 12 days for recruiting. And on the flip side, it only left 6 days for those states that have high school in the fall. Then we had last May the no contact until September 1st, the junior year. What do you see as some of the good stuff that has happened because of these changes?
Well, number one, nobody really wanted a 7th or 8th grader to verbal, and I think that most of us would agree that it's better as they get closer to college age and understanding what that decision that they're fixing to make means.
Yeah, and I think, we really think it gives a better chance for us as, advocates in the process to really put together a complete student athlete who's really ready for the experience.
Yeah, we like that we have a chance to really promote them and gain the feedback and knowledge about where they fit and where they can play from the college coaches that we see out in the marketplace.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the part I think people miss is the connections that we have with college coaches and our ability to interact and get feedback and understand what it is that they're saying. I also believe that this gives a better chance to line up multiple opportunities for these student athletes where in the old recruiting process, you couldn't hold on to an offer for very long because, people needed to move on to their next choice if you weren't interested. So it was really hard to put a bunch of opportunities in front of them and allow them to really go through the decision making around it. What's some of the bad stuff or not so good stuff, as I wrote here, that happened because of this rules? What are you seeing of?
Oh, the biggest thing I think I see right now is a false idea of the impression that these Division One college coaches aren't doing anything until September 1st of their junior year, when all actuality, you know, they're still looking at these younger kids. It just gives them a longer length of time to determine whether that player is going to be a collegiately ready player for their level.
Oh, and also longer time to really view the path that the student athlete's been on travel ball teams, the team hopping and parent behavior. I think it's going to eliminate some of the misses that they've had in the past where all of a sudden they get a family to college and they're not really behaving the way they probably should be behaving and they didn't have time to see the warning signs. So I always joke with our student athletes and say, hey, make sure your parents are behaving because now the college coaches are really watching. They have a lot more time to see it. You know, the other thing we talked about earlier, 6 or 12 days. What really is tough for these people in these colder states. I mean, you're in a state with high school in the fall in Georgia. You got Oklahoma, you got Iowa, you got Colorado, Nebraska, Missouri. Hope I didn't miss anybody there.
You've
But
got
these
private
states,
schools in Mississippi as well.
oh, yes, you're right. So these states that have this high school in the fall, they suffer even more in the new fall rules because instead of the 12 days that the rest of the country gets, they only get 6 and their Saturdays and Sundays lined up in mid-October to mid-November. That makes it really financially devastating. And I heard some college coaches talking about this at the coaches conference that they thought they were doing it to help parents save money and keep the kids in school. But it really caused more states and more student athletes to have to get up and travel and take an extra day off to get down to Florida. And people mention Texas all the time. I'll tell you, of the 6 weekends that we only had 2 that didn't rain out. I mean, it was Houston and Dallas rained out in fall, and a lot of people were upset. They felt like they didn't have a good recruiting season, but the college coaches didn't either. So I think that timing and weather brings an issue to fall. And I did hear one of the travel ball coaches from Iowa at the meeting talking about you can't expect these families to have to get on a plane and travel so much. That left no good weather dates for these states that have difficult weather in the fall. I'm not sure what parents are thinking when you hear those numbers. I mean, you've got 6 days or 12 days in all of fall, and then you really only have 8 weeks in the summer. You start counting the days, and then if you don't mind here, I'm going to go on my number. The timing that if a student athlete is under the belief in their family that they don't start the recruiting process at all until September their 1st of their junior year, they only have those 12 or 6 days in fall. They only have the 8 weeks in summer, and then they're sitting on their senior year. That's not a lot of time to see a lot of coaches. So what's some of the criteria for a student athlete, Aaron, in considering, who do they play for and do they have a plan to recruit?
Oh yeah, I think when you point out the numbers like that, you absolutely have to sit down and have a plan of action. Where are you going to play? Are you playing in tournaments that the coaches are going to? Are you doing the right things to draw the coaches to come see you play? Um, a plan of action is detrimental to this process. You can't go through it blindly. You know, 15, 20, 30 years ago, the numbers of the girls playing the game were considerably fewer, and the happenstance stuff was very common. And
Mhm.
the numbers that I'm seeing now, happenstance doesn't happen, not nearly to the degree that it once did. So, a
Yeah, I
plan of
try to
action is
explain.
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I try to explain to the parents the numbers of kids that are playing. There's over 347,000 registered high school players. I talked to one of the sanctioning bodies and I said, "Do you have any idea what the guesstimate on travel teams that are out there playing at all these tournaments?" And they said they did a really good level of research and they think it's about 55,000 travel ball teams. So where are these teams going? There's not enough college coaches on staff to be able to hit all of these tournaments and camps. And, let's talk about camps. What do you see with camps, Aaron?
Oh, a whole lot of camping and a little bit of recruiting happening. There's no way when you're going to a camp with 150 to 200 campers at one camp, and they're hosting 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 camps a year, and they're only recruiting a handful of kids. You know, chances are slim to none.
Yeah, simple math too, and I've always said you don't get to pick, the college coach picks you. So you can
That's
go to
right.
camp, but when you go to camp, you're going to camp with the ones that they've already seen play. They've already selected. They you have invited them, not necessarily on an email, but through exposure at a tournament. So are they going to the right tournaments? How does a student athlete understand that they might not be playing on the same team? I had one family that said, "Oh no, our daughter is so good, we've got her playing 18 and under." And I'm like, well, yeah, because the kind of tournaments you're at, you're not really seeing that top level. What does that top
That's right.
level really look like to you, Aaron?
Oh, your top level players are the players that are drawing the coaches to the games. Um, the kids that are highly skilled. They're the best pitchers in the country. They're the teams with the top hitters in the country. If you're playing, you have aspirations of playing at an incredibly high level of college softball. If your travel softball schedule and the teams that you're playing and the matchups you're facing aren't kids being recruited to that high caliber, we don't know if your skill level truly matches up to that caliber of player. So you
Mm.
have to take a look at the marketplace where you're at, who you're playing against. I hear people tell me all the time, "Well, my daughter's hitting over 500 and she's got an on base percentage of 780," and I take a look at who they're playing, and you almost roll your eyes to the back of your head because you're just like, wow, that talent level does not match up. If you
Right.
take that kid hitting 600 and you put her up against the best pitchers in the country right now, if she produces off of them, then it's safe to say, that's a high level kid. But if she can't consistently produce against those players, that's not the level for her.
Right. But see, that was my point. Some of these families play on travel ball teams that never even see that layer. They don't even understand that layer exists because they're not
That's
playing in those
right.
tournaments. And to me as a parent, if the coaches aren't showing up to see you play, why would you even spend the money going to their camps? Because it doesn't make a lot of sense that the college coaches are interested in your layer. If they're not recruiting and coming to the events that you're playing at, it's probably a good heads up, right?
Yeah, you should probably take a better look at who is coming to the tournament you're at. Take a peek at the layer of the game that those coaches are, and that is probably a better telltale sign of the layer that you can play at.
Well, and let's bring up the academics too. I mean, we're sitting in a state in Texas. I had a very well-educated person in the testing environment tell me that Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and Mississippi have some of the lowest averaged ACT and SAT scores in the country. So they come in with these big, high GPAs, and the colleges stop even looking at the GPA because they're coming out of small towns and independent school districts, and then they don't test well because they're not being prepared at that layer. Well, just because you want to go to one of those high academic schools doesn't mean you can get in. And so many times, I think it's even more difficult to get in academically than it is as a student athlete. That's kind of an advantage if you're a student athlete. You can maybe bring your academics and your ability to play and get into a higher end academic program. But I think a lot of times people are misunderstanding why you need to take those tests early so that you understand where you can fit. Because I had several academic schools last summer tell me they won't even go look at them until they have the minimum requirement to get in. So if you're
That's
a
right.
younger student athlete and you're trying to get in, you better go get at least a PSAT or a PACT done. And
Yeah, I think
then,
there's a false impression that goes around too that I hear all the time because the kid does boast one of these incredibly high test scores, and they automatically assume because her test scores are that high that she's going to Harvard or she's going to play at Yale or get into these Ivy leagues, and they're they're a little bit mistaken thinking that a lesser skill with a higher test grade is going to be looked upon. Those Ivy League coaches are still looking for highly talented student athletes.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. I know we're going around and around of all kinds of great things to share tonight, but that brings up a point. One of the effects of this early recruiting that I heard from both Division 2 and Division 3 coaches is everybody's picking in fall. So you look at your class of 21, a lot of them had already been verbaled at the Division 1 level, but I mean, these coaches, they look for the same talent level. So when people talk Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, I'm always saying, let's talk about the fit. Let's talk about the value. Let's talk about where you can play. And who cares what the division name next to it is, right? How about let's find out where you're valuable and let's play on a team that's actually out there competing and winning titles. One of our CSA student athletes just finished a postseason tournament today with a big trophy in their hand. That's a better fit than trying to figure out the only thing that matters is that Division 1 flag, because these Division 2s, and by the way, that was a Division 1 team, but that they didn't get to go to the College World Series. Everybody thinks that Division 1 is the ones that are all chasing the big ring at the College World Series. There's
Right.
so much more to it.
And in saying all that, another thing that I have seen as a result of these new Division 1 rules is these Division 2s, some even the higher end Division 3s, and your high end JUCOs and NAIA schools, they're getting a whole lot braver going after that higher level talent.
Yes,
They're
they're all
thinking,
sitting looking for
yeah,
those
they're
same three to
thinking,
five kids on your team.
they're thinking, hey, if I can get in here and I can build the trust of this athlete and build a relationship with this athlete, then I might stand a chance at inking this athlete a little bit sooner than September 1st. And for a lot of these kids that do boast a high skill level, maybe mid major D1 level, I think you're gonna start seeing this Division 2 become a security blanket for some of these kids that are wondering if they're going to get that call on September 1st, and would I just be better off going ahead and committing to a Division 2 school just as a precaution so that I can say I'm committed, and if I don't get a call, cool. If I do, then I might rethink my process, which to me is, that's an ethical and moral thing that you have to deal with as a family. But I think that we're going to start to see some of that. And I think that some of your Division 2 schools are even they're feeling like that as well.
Right.
But I have been out in the marketplace and I have seen some pretty brazen moves by some lower division schools going after some pretty high end kids.
Well, they want program changers, right? They want kids that can
That's
play.
right.
And I heard one D2 coach tell me last year, everybody wants a D1 player because that's all that we want. We want those program changers. We want the people that can come in and help us win tournaments and help us have a great student athlete experience, right?
Well, and that's right. And I kind of go back to a conversation that I had with Lonnie out of Alameda, the head coach at Florida State, several years ago, working a camp. And the comment was made, oh, I'd take a kid with a whole lot of heart over a higher talented player. And Lonnie kind of looked at me and smiled, and she said, heart has to have talent too. And
Mm-hmm.
she, that is, I hear that a lot from, families in the marketplace. The first thing they want to tell me is, my kid's not that good, but she plays with so much heart and she plays with so much passion. That's not a selling point to these colleges. They have to have a certain skill set to compete in their divisions. And, these college coaches' livelihoods lies in the hands of 18 to 23-year-old girls. So sometimes heart and passion is not all you have to have. You have to have something that backs that up.
Absolutely. And a couple other thoughts that came to my mind when I'm talking to student athletes and their families, they'll say, oh, no, they have interest. And I'm like, what do you mean she has interest? I'm
Oh,
talking to
age
and I'm
old
like,
thing right here.
don't mistake the coach's kindness for recruiting, right? Or,
That's
hey,
right.
you got an email to invite you to camp. That's not necessarily interest. Do you have a relationship with a credible travel ball coach or a recruiter or an advocate that has that trusted credibility that can actually help you read between the lines? Because That's not recruiting in our term. Our term is when they've seen you play, they've invited you to their elite camp, and
And I think that right there, I mean, there is a method to their madness. If they
beautiful.
have
Yep.
never come to see you on a ball field and you're getting an email from them, red flag number one, right? I've never seen this coach at my game yet. My name is on this email. She must know me. No, people don't understand how these coaches are marketing. It's a marketing thing. Division I college softball is not a revenue sport. They have to build their own revenue, and that is by hosting camps and clinics. And that's that's one thing that when I deal with our families with CSA, that we're trying to help them understand where to spend their money so that it's not all in vain. We want to make sure we're making the right financial decisions in this game. There are so many black holes that you just throw your money into and you never get anything back out of it. And there is a right way to go about this process from a financially sound standpoint.
Absolutely. And you went back to, or I'll go back to your original thought about having a plan. I mean, I always ask the parents, well, what's your plan for recruiting? Well, my travel club is going to help me get recruited. Well, heck, you can't play the game without a great travel ball coach. And I always say this, that your best thing you can do is play for a club that can prepare you to play in college with coaches that have trusted these coaches before. Then you have a good solid base. But most of the travel ball coaches I know are they have their own jobs, they have their own families, and coaching a high-level travel ball team in this world, it's a lot of time. It involves, running financials and travel and making everything happen for these families. And I always ask, so what are they doing for your student athlete individually? Are you recruiting as a team? What are they doing that's different? Because not everybody on the team has got the same plan,
Right. And
you
and
know?
so with that being said, I I deal with a lot of families, I deal with a lot of kids, I deal with a lot of travel ball coaches who their idea of helping with recruiting is to tell the student athletes and families, oh, well, you just need to go to this camp or you just need to send these emails. But they're not taking the time to sit down with these families and hash out the important stuff of, hey, what goes in these emails? These college coaches, I know for myself, when I was at Ole Miss, the number of emails that we got on a daily basis, and I am so old that we were still getting snail mail and DVDs in the mail. It was asinine. So what drove us to want to open it? You've got to understand that they're not reading everything that they get. And so as a travel ball coach or an advocate or whoever, you have to teach families and players how to be effective with their communication,
Yeah.
how to ensure that a coach is going to read this, what should go in it, how long should it be, and you have to lay the foundation. And there again with communication in these colleges, I can sit back as an advocate and almost pinpoint the step-by-step process of what's going on and what's going to come next. Okay, this kid has established some contact with this college. This college has shown up. I can almost dictate what the next step is going to be, and thereby I'm able to go in as an advocate for our student athletes and help prepare them for what's to come. And so they're not blindsided when September 1st comes and they get the phone call from the college coach because we've already pre established the plan.
Yeah.
We know what's going to be asked, we know what's going to be said. My parents know their role and how they should be, whether it's
I
a
always
phone
joke
call.
that I'm old enough, I already know the outcome. I could pretty much predict
That's
it, other
right.
than the fact that I don't get that privilege to offer them the offer. Well, it brings up another point, because you talked about the communication, and this is something we struggle with, is the NCAA's only method of contact is email before that September 1st date. And you have so many people tweeting at the college coaches and doing all of what I mean, I'm a marketing, a sales executive, and those are common things in a marketing 101 plan, but it's not allowed by the college. The college coaches are not allowed to follow, interact, all that language. They're not allowed to do that right now. That might change in time as social media becomes more prevalent, because it is common in football, and that's something we deal with differently. But in softball, NCAA, 1,000 emails a day from some of these college coaches. I mean, we ask them, how many do you get?
And
So
that's on
how
the low
effective?
end.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's overwhelming. But the thing that we do so differently, and what we want these families to understand, is they have to get exposure to the right coaches at the right time and at the right layer. And if you don't have that knowledge, and you're not getting that feedback to put your hands into a particular travel ball team's pocket with the amount of movement that happens from travel team. I mean, because some of them do a great job at recruiting, but what happens if you're not on that team? What happens, like we just had three 2019s, and two D1s and a NAIA with coach changes.
That's
You're going to
right.
go back to that travel club that you went, you got committed to in a junior year, and now you're a senior, and maybe something happened and you're not playing for the same team. I mean, there's so many
Oh,
pitfalls.
the old verbal advantage. That's a
Mm-hmm.
that's golly. I talked to a lot of coaches about that actually. And I have actually, I witnessed something last summer that I had heard about. I had not physically witnessed it, but I actually watched a SEC coach walk over to a field and lean her head in the dugout and ask where a student athlete was. Coach responded with, "Oh, she doesn't play with us anymore." And coach walked off. And I caught up with her a little bit later and I said, "Look, I wasn't meaning to eavesdrop, but what does that what does that make you feel like?" And her exact words to me were, "Scratch and move on."
Mm-hmm.
And, and the
Mm-hmm.
kid was verbal to her.
Right.
So if you can't make, oh, Lord have mercy, that's one of, if you guys aren't following me on social media, I go on rants, but that is, you can't play at a high level and be verbal at that high level and think moving forward, this is the age old problem. Oh, now I get to sit back, help my mom and dad save some money. I don't need to do all this travel. I don't need to do all these showcases. And yet, that's where the high talent is continuing to play. If you're going to be verbal to that big of a school, you have to be playing in that stuff too,
Well,
or
and
you are not going to be ready.
yeah, I think that was one of the pitfalls of that early recruit. There's just so much time in between, so much could happen. And, again, and just to bring it full circle and hopefully close out the call here, is that, some of the pluses are great. I think it puts the student athletes in a better bundle. You get a better chance to see them all mature and grow. The downside of that is a kid could take an unfortunate, untimely injury at the wrong time. It's there's just so many things that happen in the recruiting process. But Erin, I wanted to just make note to the listeners, we have a really nice crowd here tonight. Thank you all for joining us. To make sure you're on social media with us, we do put a lot of just genuine information out there. We've got them listed on our screen there. Thanks to Nick for putting up some great graphics today and making this all happen for us. But we're going to try to do this more often. What we would love is a few more callers that would actually, join in and have conversation with us and ask what's on their mind. So go to Collegiate Sports Advocate on Facebook. We have a dynamic, almost 10,000 likes on our main page. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and we're on LinkedIn. Our individual advocates are all listed on our About Us page. We've all got our logos next to us that indicate what social media we're on. But, have a plan. Parents, don't sit back and think that this is so easy. I told a parent today in the, it'd be like me coming into their workforce and on the backs of my student athlete, trying to learn their job in a short enough time frame to benefit my student athlete to the best of their ability. And, hopefully that can summarize us. And anything else that you wanted to close with here?
No, I think these are cool. I love to just share the knowledge and information that we gain. None of this is made up. We are actually out in the marketplace talking to coaches at every level of the game because we want to help those coaches find a fit for their programs as much as we want to help our student athletes find the fit. And I can honestly say, the past 3 years working with CSA and doing what we do has been such a fulfilling role in my life when, I didn't think I was going to get to do what I really wanted to do in this game anymore for life happenings, choosing to raise a family over coaching at a high level. And I absolutely believe in our mission. And these podcasts
Excellent.
are for you guys. We want to share our knowledge and passion for what we do with y'all, in hopes that more education gets out there and more student athletes are finding the right place.
Well, I want to challenge everybody listening today and those that might hear replay. Come up to us. We have a recognizable logo. There's 24 of us. You can see where we're going on our events page. We actually go to the events where our student athletes are. But come up to us and say hi. Introduce yourselves. Would love to meet everybody. Would love to talk to you about your plan for your student athlete and help them find their fit so they can be the best they can be for the next 40 years, because we stay with them until they graduate. So in that, we're going to graduate college. I've got to clarify that. But we want to close out again. Thank Nick Nadine for all his technology support here. And Erin, thank you so much for all that you do. We appreciate you. And people are logging off, so we're going to hang up. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, y'all.
This world is not what it was meant to be. All this pain, all this suffering. There's a better place waiting for me in heaven. Every tear will be wiped away. Every sorrow and sin